Still no package from the post office, so we're still got lots of things to do. Let's get right into it. Here's my modeling tip of the day. We've made a series of wheels for the gun carriages, and they all have to be 3 5/8 in thickness. So from a scale perspective, that's 0.0755 of an inch. So how do we get all the wheels to be the same thickness when this is the size of the wheels? And so it's really very simple. You make up a board that has a nice tight fit that the wheels will fit into, and you put them in and just run them through the thickness sander. My one worry when I was about to do this was that I might find them flying out of the sander when I put them through. That turned out not to be the case. Of the 70 or 80 wheels that I put through here, only 2 cracked, and those probably were cracked before I even put them into the sander. So hooked them up and really it fitted perfectly. The next challenge I faced was how do I cut the chuck keys, which is a piece of wire that is 0.019 in this case. It's the pin that holds the wheel onto the shaft of the carriage. As with all these videos, I'm showing you what I did and what worked. This was my first attempt, and this was a real pain. It didn't work very well. That's using a block to determine the length of the piece. The second method I used was to drill a hole to the required depth, leaving just enough sticking out at the top. I could put the cutters on the piece, cut it out, and then squeeze one end, the end that was sticking out, to flatten it, because that's the part that would prevent the key from slipping all the way through the axle once the wheel was put on. Now what was left is to take out the pewter black to blacken the parts, and I thought I'd throw 1 or 2 of the brass cannons in, see how that would come out. And that's where the magic of the turbo carver has come to my rescue. I have a very fine bit that I actually got from a dentist friend of mine, which is almost like a needle, and allows me to very carefully position the turbo carver right at the edge and drill a starter hole from which I can then drill using one of my drilling machines. Now I take a bigger drill bit and open the hole very carefully. I'm using the smallest drill bit that I have that is close enough to the final size, but small enough that I won't have a problem. Without that starter hole, I would have destroyed the axle for sure. And once that is done, I take the final drill size and very carefully again widen the hole. I do this by hand because I don't want to make a mistake and I don't want to ruin the part. Once complete, we do a trial fit to make sure that the wire will pass through the hole, and then we'll actually put the wheel on and then fit the wire to make sure that I put the hole in the right space. So again, completes this exercise. And now comes a magic moment to try and fit these keys into the axle hole. Takes a bit of patience. Sometimes you may have to open the hole up slightly, but it worked out pretty good in this case. Now we're going to make some rings for the breeching ring bolt, and to do this we take some brass wire which has been annealed and wrap it around whatever size pipe you want to make the ring of, slip the bent pieces out and then cut it out with a nippers, and you'll get some beautiful rings. And then you silver solder these pieces, and this is what they'll come out to be. So then we just clean them up, attach the eye bolt, solder it in place, and we have the final piece. The next step is to paint the carriage bases, and we're doing this with wipe-on poly, it's our main varnish for all these pieces. Again, put on a very light coat, let it dry for at least an hour, sand it off, and then put on a second final coat. Because of the size of these pieces, I wouldn't go more than 2 coats. Now we're going to look at using Jack's Pewter Black, which blackens the parts, and we'll do a little experiment. I'll take one of these brass cannons and turn it black. There are no instructions with this, and it's taken me quite a while to find out what you have to do. The main issue, it seems, with whatever part you want to turn black is it has to be absolutely clean, and the suggestion is that you get some vinegar and you put the part in the vinegar and leave it there for a while. I would say at least half an hour, and then you take it out and you can actually paint the pewter black directly onto it. I'd seen various other things that said you really need to cut the pewter black in half by adding water, and I've done that, and it doesn't seem to, the black doesn't seem to stay. But doing it this way with the vinegar, it's absolutely stayed. And here is one that I did yesterday, and there's nothing coming off of it. There's a little part I missed here which I'll recover right now, but it really is perfectly done. So I think that's pretty good. Just take off the vinegar and stick it on something to hold it, and let's give it a little paint and see what happens. Amazing. I'm going to leave this for about 10-15 minutes, and I might as well fix this little piece here on this one. That's about 15 minutes, so we can take it off and wipe it. You can see we're getting some stuff off, but it's pretty black. And then we'll just go and wash it off in fresh water. And here they are. This is the one, no, this is the one we just did. Absolutely fantastic. I wish I'd known that about the vinegar a long time ago, because I've thrown away half this bottle. So simple and easy to do. So here we have the cap square. This is on the larger cannon, and it's 2 5/8 in width Sometimes the head of the cap scare is on the forward end, but I've seen others where it's on the aft end. I'm not sure which is right. David has it that the eye is on the forward end. To do that, it's going to take a lot of skill, so I'm going to make a few of these and then I'll come back and tell you the experience of doing it. But the first and more difficult piece is actually forming the cap square itself. And to do that, as you know, I like my jigs. I've made up a little jig, and this is a little jig, and it has two lines. One line holds a piece which I'm going to press on the piece of brass that makes up the cap square, which will give it the curve. And the other line is the exact thickness of the cap square, and it's got a little piece at the back which holds it in place so it can't come out, so that when I squeeze it down, it won't flip out. But the first thing we need to do is this piece of bronze is under a fair amount of tension, so we need to heat it up to anneal it to make it soft. So again, we simply put it in the jig, hold my piece, squeeze it down, bend this back flat so we have it flat on both sides, and sometimes you might want to make sure that it's down on both sides, and then simply cut it off with the cutting pliers. And I know it'll be a bit difficult to see, but there we have a perfect piece. And there it is on the cannon. What we're going to do now is solder a piece on the back to simulate the hinge, and to stick a piece sticking up in the air to simulate the eye bolt. Two things would make this exercise a lot easier. One is some solder paste, which would allow me to put the minimum amount of solder on the joint, and the second one is a resistance solder that would work at this level. Unfortunately, mine isn't, so we're back to the standard old soldering iron. We do have a very important piece, a little vise that holds the upright and allows it to be soldered. Now we blacken the pieces, and I'm happy to say we're all done, and it wasn't too hard in the end, and I think it does simulate a good impression. Here are the two pieces installed, and I think they work pretty well. I think the scale is very good, and now all that's left to do is to put in the various rings and eyes on the side of the carriage. Perhaps the biggest challenge with making up these carriages is it's got so many parts in it that you have to make up all the final parts. You can't start and make one. You actually have to make all the parts, in this case for the 16 cannons. Of course, I'm making 20 cannons because the odds of me messing up on one of these is pretty high. So that means if they're copper parts or brass parts, you have to make them up, you have to blacken them, and you need lots of spares. So I actually had, again, I call it the little cannon box, that all the parts come in here, and until they were all done, I wouldn't try to put the whole frame together. Now for the final assembly. You'll notice that I've widened the holes on the sides on the back and on the front. That's to allow the eye bolt to fit in and make you think that it's a U-bolt. To stick these pieces in, I'm using thick CA, simply because it gives me a nice strong feel. It doesn't discolor or get anywhere that it's not supposed to get, and I much prefer it. So again, just taking your time, putting the pieces in, and you need to push the rings in quite hard. Now for the difficult piece of the cap square, again using thick CA, and I have to say, I thought about using 5mm epoxy. I think it's probably much of the same, so I'll stick with the thick CA. The final part of this build is to attach the cap square, eye bolt and key, and we've done this with a piece of very thin black thread, and we think that really fits the illusion perfectly.